My dear friend, tonight I wish to walk with you into the darker corridors of the soul, the places we often avoid, yet cannot escape. We speak of light and shadow as if they were opposites, but they are inseparable, like breath and silence, like sea and shore. Carl Jung, a man who listened carefully to the whispers of the unconscious, taught us that the shadow is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a part of ourselves to be understood. And yet, most of us live in quiet terror of this inner shadow. Why is this so? The shadow, my friend, is not some distant, abstract force. It is the sum of everything we deny about ourselves, the anger we hide, the desires we repress, the traits we scorn, the parts of our character we refuse to recognize. It is all the colors of the self we refuse to name. And the moment we glimpse it, even in a whisper of reflection, fear rises. We fear the shadow because it confronts us with truths we have long avoided. We fear it because it challenges the comforting story we tell ourselves about who we are. Jung said that what we resist persists. And the shadow, ever patient, waits at the threshold of awareness. It does not strike or punish, it merely exists. But the mind, clever and fearful, often interprets its presence as danger. I must suppress this, we tell ourselves. I must deny it, hide it, forget it. And so begins a long dance of avoidance, where we wander through life without seeing the full landscape of our own being. But consider this, what is truly fearful? Is it the shadow itself, or the realization that it has always been with us? That the parts of ourselves we dislike, the emotions we judge, the impulses we suppress, are not foreign, they are ours. We fear our own shadow because it reflects back our own unacknowledged power. The rage we deny may be a force of clarity. The desire we repress may point to the life we have avoided. The traits we scorn may hold keys to wholeness we have yet to unlock. Let me tell you a story, a small parable that captures this tension between fear and understanding. In a quiet village at the edge of a forest, there lived a young man named Elias. Every night, he dreamed of a dark figure, lurking just beyond the trees, watching him. He would wake in terror, telling himself it was only a dream, nothing more. But over time, the dreams became more vivid, more insistent. The figure was patient, never leaving, never attacking, only observing. One day, an elder of the village noticed Elias's anxiety and said, "Do you not see that the figure follows you everywhere, even in waking life?" Elias replied, trembling, "I cannot look at it. I fear what it will reveal about me." The elder smiled softly and said, "You fear what you refuse to embrace. The figure is not your enemy. It is the truth of yourself that you have hidden in shadows. To fear it is natural, but to meet it with courage is to find freedom." That night, Elias walked to the edge of the forest, heart pounding. The shadow waited, as always. And slowly, he stepped closer, breathing through his fear. And in that moment of facing the darkness, something remarkable happened. He began to recognize himself within the figure. The anger he had suppressed, the grief he had ignored, the doubts he had dismissed, they were all there. And for the first time, he felt not terror, but a strange relief. A relief that comes from recognition, from seeing what was always present, but hidden. This, my friend, is the essence of Jung's lesson. We fear our shadow because it holds our truths, and truths are never entirely comfortable. But fear is not condemnation, it is invitation. Fear whispers, "Here lies what you have denied. Here lies what you must know." To turn away is to remain fragmented. To look within is to begin the slow, often painful, process of integration. Consider how many of us go through life avoiding these reflections. We judge ourselves harshly for emotions we cannot escape, labeling them as wrong or unacceptable. Anger becomes shame. Desire becomes guilt. Jealousy becomes contempt. And we pack these shadows into hidden compartments, where they fester, influencing our choices and our perceptions, shaping our world in ways we cannot understand. Yet when we begin to explore the shadow, when we start to see it not as threat but as a teacher, a transformation begins. We discover resilience we never knew we had. We find creativity in places we had long denied. We see patterns in our relationships, in our work, in our lives that had always been hidden beneath the surface. The shadow, once feared, becomes a guide. Jung often reminded us that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires this confrontation. One cannot claim wholeness while denying half of oneself. And the shadow is half. To deny it is to live with a perpetual fracture, a gap that cannot be filled by achievements, relationships, or possessions. Only by facing it, by listening to it, by understanding its language, can one begin to live with true integrity. Think, for a moment, of the people you know who are most authentic. They are not perfect. They are not free from flaw or failure. But they carry within them a kind of depth, a richness that comes from having faced their own shadows, however imperfectly. They do not deny themselves, and thus, they do not live in constant fear of being discovered. Their power is quiet, profound, and liberating. And yet, facing the shadow is not a single act. It is a lifelong practice. It is the willingness to pause when fear arises, to ask, what is this showing me? What am I resisting? It is the patience to sit with discomfort, to observe, to learn, and to transform. And sometimes, it is the courage to act, to change habits, to speak truths, to forgive oneself, to allow growth where before there was only denial. My friend, imagine your shadow not as a monster waiting to consume you, but as a mirror reflecting what is hidden. Within that reflection lies both your capacity for destruction and for creation, both your fear and your courage, both your darkness and the potential for light. And the moment you stop running, stop resisting, and begin to see, something remarkable happens. The shadow ceases to control you, and you begin to move with it, rather than against it. Let us pause here, for in this recognition, we have taken the first step toward understanding. And in the next part, I will guide you further into the depths of the shadow, exploring the ways it shapes our relationships, our creativity, and our very sense of self, revealing why fear is not the enemy, but the doorway to a life lived in full consciousness. Welcome back, my friend. Now that we have approached the threshold of the shadow, let us step more fully into its quiet corridors, where fear and wisdom meet. To live without confronting this hidden part of ourselves is to walk half blind, to carry a map with half its roads missing. And yet, so many of us do precisely that, navigating life with only fragments of understanding, avoiding the very darkness that could teach us most. The shadow is not punishment. It is not condemnation. It is, above all, a reflection, an invitation to wholeness. When we fear it, we fear ourselves, the unacknowledged truths that shape our inner world. And the irony is profound, what we most resist within ourselves often has the greatest potential to free us. Think of creativity, for instance. Many of the world's most profound artists, writers, and thinkers have drawn their work from places others call darkness. They have dared to touch what society labels forbidden, shameful, or frightening, and from that encounter emerged beauty that transforms the lives of countless others. And the origin of that creativity is not external, it lies in facing the shadow, in naming and embracing what was hidden. The fear they felt was real, but it became the fuel for expression, for connection, for life itself. I want to tell you another story, one that illustrates this delicate dance between fear and transformation. In a distant town, there lived a painter named Leora. She was respected for her skill, yet she was restless, haunted by images she could not explain, faces twisted with sorrow, landscapes filled with smoke and shadow, figures half visible, half hidden. She tried to paint only what was pleasing, what the patrons wanted, but her hands trembled at the brush, as if the hidden images within her would not be denied. One evening, in the silence of her studio, she finally faced the fear she had long avoided. She took the darkest paints she had, mixed them with her own tears, and allowed the shadows within her to flow onto the canvas. Hours passed like minutes. When she finally stepped back, she saw not only darkness but also the strange illumination within it, truths about herself, about desires and regrets, about the loneliness and courage she had carried all her life. She realized that fear had guided her into hiding, but only by facing it had she found freedom. This is the lesson Jung offers: the shadow is a doorway. It is a reflection of what we deny, but it is also a source of profound growth. We fear it because it reveals our vulnerability, our power, and our depth all at once. And yet, only by walking through that fear do we begin to see ourselves as whole. Many people avoid the shadow by projecting it onto others. We label someone else as cruel, selfish, or weak, when in truth we are only seeing our own denied tendencies reflected back. This is projection, and it is a natural defense, but it keeps us from understanding ourselves. By fearing what we see in others, we fear the mirror of our own soul. The shadow reminds us that the qualities we despise in the world are often the qualities we reject within ourselves. And until we face that, we remain prisoners of illusion. Consider how relationships are shaped by this dynamic. Conflict often arises not because of the other person's actions alone, but because our shadow reacts to them. Anger, jealousy, envy, these are not simply the faults of others, they are signals from our own psyche, asking us to notice what we have buried. To understand this is to step into a deeper form of empathy. We begin to see that others, too, are dancing with shadows, often unaware of their own fears and denials. This recognition transforms conflict into insight, judgment into compassion, separation into connection. And yet, walking into the shadow is not easy. It is a slow, deliberate, often painful process. It requires courage, the courage to witness one's own darkness without fleeing, without judgment. It requires patience, the patience to sit with discomfort, to observe, to reflect, and to allow understanding to unfold naturally. And it requires honesty, the honesty to say, yes, this is part of me. I cannot deny it any longer. Jung suggested that integration of the shadow leads to individuation, the process of becoming fully oneself. And what does that look like? It does not mean perfection, nor does it mean that darkness disappears. Rather, it means that we acknowledge the darkness, learn from it, and allow it to inform our choices, our relationships, our creativity, our very way of being. We are no longer half blind, we can navigate life with eyes wide open, aware of both light and shadow. There is another story, perhaps more intimate, that illustrates the subtlety of this journey. A woman named Mara spent years avoiding her own anger. She had been taught that anger was dangerous, shameful, unworthy of expression, so she smiled when she was hurt, nodded when she was ignored, and swallowed every insult that came her way. Yet the anger never disappeared, it grew like a quiet storm within her, shaping her thoughts, her choices, her sense of self in ways she could not name. One day, after a minor disagreement with a colleague, the anger she had long denied erupted. At first, she was ashamed. She feared she had become someone ugly, uncontrollable, a person she had never wanted to be. And then, slowly, she reflected. She realized that the anger was not her enemy. It was a signal, a guide, a piece of truth she had refused to acknowledge. She began to explore it, not to act destructively, but to understand its origin, to see what boundaries had been crossed, what desires had been suppressed, what fears had been avoided. Through this practice, Mar found not only the courage to assert herself but also the wisdom to temper her reactions. Her anger became a teacher, her fear a messenger, her shadow a companion rather than a tyrant. And in this, she discovered freedom. My friend, notice a pattern: the shadow is feared because it is unknown, but it is known already, it lives within us. Fear is natural, avoidance is common. But courage, reflection, and honesty turn fear into guidance. The shadow is not punishment, it is invitation, a mirror that shows us what we deny and, ultimately, what we can embrace. Perhaps the most subtle power of the shadow is in its paradox: it contains both danger and potential, darkness and illumination, fear and freedom. To meet it is to confront vulnerability, but also to awaken resilience. It is to touch the raw materials of our soul, and in that touch, we discover strength we did not know existed. So I ask you, my dear friend, to consider your own shadow tonight. Where have you denied yourself? What parts of your character have you hidden in shame or fear? Which desires, which emotions, which truths have you refused to name? And can you, even for a moment, breathe with them, observe them, and allow them to speak? This is the work of a lifetime. It is the slow, patient cultivation of awareness, the willingness to meet discomfort, the practice of seeing all aspects of oneself. And the reward is profound: wholeness, clarity, creativity, depth, and a freedom that no external circumstance can take away. And so, my friend, in the next moments of silence, remember this: fear of the shadow is natural, but it is not final. Fear can guide you to the truths that will set you free. The darkness you dread is also the source of light you have yet to see. The shadow is patient, waiting for your courage, waiting for your recognition, waiting for the day when you no longer flee but stand in awareness, and in doing so, begin to truly live.